What is going on, RoK Fam? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today we are back again, continuing our Jumper Project series here for the next installment in part, which is going to be talking about how you are going to interact in Zone 1, right? How you're going to interact with other alliances, how you would potentially go about forming your diplomatic ties, right? How you would just kind of play out a Zone 1 in general, right? Up until Zone 2 opens. That's kind of going to be what this video is. And then we'll eventually cover kind of Zone 2. We'll cover Zone 3 and then eventually talk about once migration opens up, some kind of up to the first KVK. So for now, right in this video, before I get started, as always, make sure you guys sub, like, ring the notification bell, and of course, if you want to join and be a part of our conversation, you can hit up our Discord, which you'll find in the description and pinned comment down below. So here, right, you've landed, you're in Zone 1. Right now, what you need to be looking at is, because remember, it depends on, like we always talk about, how big of a group do you have coming in, right? I will operate under the guise of just a few options, right? One, you're either just a single alliance or you have a few alliances. And so, when you are operating in any of your provinces, the first thing you want to try and do is identify who are some of the other big players, big alliances that are coming up. Now, some indicators for these could be, right, who gets their center fortress up first? Or who gets them up soonest? How many of them have what you would feel or consider to be kind of good central placement of the fortress? After maybe they build their first 20 flags, maybe 10 flags or so, you kind of get an idea of, what direction are they focusing on? Are they trying to connect a pass first? Are they trying to go to I keep forgetting, I think it's like altar and shrine, right? Or it's altar and relic. God, I know one of them is altar. I always forget the second name though. And I tend sanctum. That's what it's called. God, I always keep forgetting. So you got the altars and the sanctums, right? So are they going and branching out to an altar or a sanctum? Are they going to try and cut your flag off? Are they going to one of the gates for going into Zone 2 first? Or are they going for one of the adjacent gates? Again, you can, if you've played RoK for a while, you can probably get an indicator on how well organized, right? How much of an idea, a good grasp that the leader and their management team have in the alliance, depending on where they're going. So these are just some things to consider. Now, once you can also start kind of discerning what the alliance power is, right? So who else is really strong in the region? Just because they're flagging out a lot does not necessarily mean that they have a lot of strong players. So this is why it's good to pay attention to those particulars, right? An example of that would be, let me go here for alliance, right? So you can see some areas here are that you can see flagged. So what I would do is I would go here, I'd find a flag, I'd say, okay, here's the owner, here's the alliance. Okay, so what is the alliance power, right? What's their territory number? What's their gift level? How many members do they have? Okay, cool, right? Then I'll go into alliance members and I'll look at, okay, well, what's the average power? What kind of power are we looking at here for not only the lead, the officers, and then maybe even some of the rank 3s and rank 2s, right? Okay, and maybe I'm discerning, after looking at this alliance, even though they have a lot of flags, they're not really that strong, right? So you can probably get an early estimate that you could probably, either take them or you might have now some leverage because you just know you're strong or an average, so that can factor into how you're going to conversate with them or what you may work out through discussions later on down the road after you kind of get past the introduction phase. But then you're going to want to reach out to each of the leads, right? So you would just contact the lead, you'd write your introduction mail, right, and say, something like, kingdom diplomacy or, something like leader introduction, right? Or your name, like let's say your alliance is, let's keep it simple, we'll go Y2K. So you say Y2K leader introduction, right? Hi, I don't know, something like that, right? Then you come down here to your message body and, you'll say, hi, I'll just use the name here, right? You'll go, hi, Raichu, right? Do formatting because that's important, right? And you'll just say something like, hi, hi, I'm reaching out, reaching out from my alliance to um, to to introduce, we'll just say it like that, to introduce myself, and see what your alliance's plans are. Plans are for the region. Are you an alliance by yourself? Do you have allies? You can say like, yeah, or do you have allies? Here we go. Do you have allies? Bam. Okay, right. And then you kind of started off something simple like that. You can also just go here and, just send them a, gosh, not that. I think because you have to add first, right? No, you shouldn't have to. Okay, cool. Right, so you'll go here, and you can just chat them too. You can do the same thing. Start off by saying hi, introducing yourself in a DM. You don't necessarily have to send a mail out. And, you start the conversation out that way. Then you do that with all the leaders in your province, right? So if you got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 other alliances that have their center fortresses down within your province, you just identify that, you look at each of them, you reach out, and you just start a conversation. You try and get a gauge on where are they going, what are their plans, what are they looking to do in this province, how do they want to start out, right? Do they have allies? Are they by themselves, right? You can ask these general questions, which are kind of pretty much non-threatening, but they give you really good information because it'll tell you then how you can proceed in the province, right? Do we need to be a little bit more aggressive? Can we try and maybe apply some diplomacy, right? Maybe you try and reach out and identify in the first couple days, right, who may be the top 3, top 2. It also depends on what you want to do, right? I'm only focusing here on the introduction portion. It also depends on what your alliance or your group is. Maybe you guys just want to take over the region, so you're just kind of figuring out how to identify the other active alliances. You're introducing yourself. And then, maybe you just have a slow plan to just kind of take over the province one by one by maybe just picking apart the weakest alliances, and then you just kind of, I don't want to say gulp, but you convert some of their top players, right, from their alliance into yours. You can also do it the way where you want to maybe kind of split the area. Maybe you split the area up in 2s or 3rds, right? And in that case, maybe you'll try and identify the next strongest alliance outside of yours, or the next 2 strongest alliances outside of yours, and then try and come up with a deal with them, right, to kind of split the territory, split some of the structures, and then you go from there, and it kind of sets you up a little bit of an easier path going into Zone 2. Now, anything that you do and you decide to do is going to have implications, right? Because no matter what, you're going to have multiple alliances that are going to start on every province, but not every one of those alliances is going to be able to advance into Zone 2, right? Merging early on, especially with how RoK works, with you going into zones deeper into the center, going towards the center of the map, and the territory area lessening. It is just important to recognize that you will have to do merges, right, up to a certain point. And so, again, having those conversations with them and applying that essentially across every province, right? Any province that you go into here, regardless of however many alliances are there, you pretty much do the same practice. Woo, killing it right now. Just not super softly. So you get to this point. Now, ideally, you want to try and prep yourself going into Zone 2, right? So if you have, let's say you're a group and you have multiple alliances, you guys can double up in provinces, right? You can take 2 or 3 alliances per province, depending on how many you have. If you don't want to try and have presence in every single province, you can pick and choose, right? How you go about conducting diplomacy, kind of figuring out what other alliances want to do. Because for the most part, if you're doing your project, you should already know what you want to do. You should already have an idea on what your 1 alliance is, what your 2 alliance, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 alliances are doing, what your game plan is before you even land in Final Kingdom. So that way you already know how to view your approach to each of the alliances, right? And then really a lot of it is just introducing yourself and kind of collecting information to discern what your next step is going to be, right? And again, in most cases, you're going to try and set yourself up, for a future Zone 2 advancement. And then once you get to that point where you have everything pretty much figured out, you got stuff ironed out, then a lot of what it's really going to come down to is another thing to really consider. And this is kind of like my special pro tip of the video, is a lot of what it's going to come down to is mitigation, right? You need to consider, how are you going to be able to keep the most amount of active alliances in the server, ultimately in that province or in any of the provinces that you have access to? Because if your goal as a project is to run, manage, be that kind of governing body in your kingdom, then you also have to think about player activity and, more importantly, player retention, right? Because you want to try and have the kingdom be as active as possible. And that goes back to what I was saying before, is that you have to be cautious of the implications, right, or the after effects from decisions that are made depending on how you approach the Zone 1 provinces. Because remember, the beginning of the server is the most important part, where you have the highest level of activity, right? Because everyone has to pick a Zone 1. So up until the new server is released, you are getting 100% of that incoming traffic to the game that is being populated in your kingdom in one of those 6 Zone 1 provinces. So this is just something to really consider when you are going in with your jumper project. Like I said, whether it's 1 up to 12 alliances or however many in between, plus or minus, these are really important things beyond how you will just view playing out your province in Zone 1. Also thinking about the later implications, right? You got to think 10, 20 steps down the road, not just, hey, what are we doing right now in Zone 1, but how is what we are going to do, how is our conduct that we are doing in Zone 1, in our province or across multiple provinces, going to affect how Zone 2 could look, how Zone 3 could look, going into KVK 1, post KVK 1. These are things that we have to have a little bit of foresight to consider and to more so anticipate how these things may play out. With that being said, that pretty much covers this next part. The next video I'm going to do is actually going to be a combination of Zone 2 and Zone 3. And then may talk about kind of once you get to final building, or I should say, I always forget if it's called Lost Temple or not, because it always confuses me. It is Lost Temple. Okay, wow. So I can still remember some of these things, right? And then we'll talk about Zone 2, Zone 3, and then we'll talk about Lost Temple. And then the next video after that will probably just be covering KVK prep, going in for KVK 1 if we go that far in the project. So there's at least going to be one more video, possibly 2 more. Again, we'd love to know what you guys think about this. Like I said, we're getting pretty close to the end of this series, as really it is just kind of a high-level general overview of how you can kind of go about preparing your project. And I'd love to know if any of these videos that I am doing are helping you. If you're someone who's considering doing a project, if you're in a project and maybe you're sharing these videos with members or your management or leadership team that is there, right? Hopefully you may find this somewhat helpful. With that being said, that's it for me. As always, until next time, we'll catch you later.